Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome back to Anna's English channel. I'm Anna, and I am so happy to be here with you today. Today's episode is special. We are exploring first-time experiences, but we are doing it with a twist. We aren't just looking at the moment things happened. We are looking at the story before the story.
Hi, Anna. Hi, everyone. I'm Leo. That sounds intriguing, Anna. The story before the story? You mean what led us to those big moments?
Exactly. And to do that, we need a specific tool in our English language. Today, we are focusing on the past perfect tense. While the present perfect talks about life experience up to now, the past perfect helps us talk about an action that was finished before another point in the past. It's like looking at a timeline. If the main story is in the past perfect is the background.
Ah, I see. So if I say, when I finally reached the mountaintop, the sun had already set, I'm using the past perfect. Reaching the top is the past, but the sun setting happened even earlier.
Spot on, Leo. We use had plus the past action word. It helps our listeners understand the sequence of events. So today, as we share our firsts, notice how we use this grammar to set the scene. Leo, let's go back to your very first solo trip. You mentioned that village in the mountains earlier. Tell me about the moment you arrived.
It was a cold evening. When I stepped off that bus, I realized I was completely unprepared. I had forgotten to check the weather forecast before I left home. I thought it would be warm, but the wind was freezing.
Oh no, so the mistake happened before the trip even started.
Exactly. By the time I found a small guest house, my hands had become numb from the cold. But there was something else. I had spent hours imagining a perfect, sunny village, so seeing that covered in gray mist was a huge shock.
That's such a great example. When you saw the mist, your imagining had already finished. For me, my first trip to London was similar. Before I even stepped onto the plane, I had read 3 different guidebooks. I had memorized the map of the underground. I thought I was a genius.
And were you?
Not at all. When I walked out of the station, I realized that reality was much louder than my books. Even though I had studied the maps, the streets looked completely different. I had expected a quiet, old-fashioned city, but what I found was a fast-moving, modern world.
It's funny how our expectations work. Before we arrive, our minds had already built a whole world that doesn't exist.
Let's talk about a different kind of first. Had you ever stood on a stage before you gave that big speech you mentioned earlier?
Never. That was the first time, but the preparation was intense. For weeks before that night, I had practiced in front of my mirror every single morning. I had even recorded my own voice to hear how I sounded.
So you had done the hard work before the audience even sat down.
Yes, but on the night of the speech, something went wrong. Just as I walked onto the stage, I realized I had left my notes in the dressing room. Can you imagine the panic?
Oh, Leo, so at that moment, you realized the notes had stayed behind. What did you do?
Well, because I had rehearsed so many times, the words were in my heart. I didn't need the paper. I had worried so much about the notes, but in the end, my memory had already captured everything I needed to say.
That is a powerful lesson. My first time playing the piano in a recital was similar. Before I sat down at the piano, the girl before me had played a perfect piece. She was incredible. Because I had heard her play so well, I felt even more nervous. I had convinced myself that I would fail.
But you didn't, right?
No. Once my fingers touched the keys, I remembered all the hours I had spent practicing in the dark. The music just came out.
Speaking of firsts, we have to talk about that lasagna again, but through the timeline of the past perfect.
Yes. When your friends arrived at your door, what had you already done to that kitchen?
Oh, Anna, it was a war zone. Before the first guest rang the doorbell, I had accidentally spilled a whole bottle of olive oil on the floor. I had also managed to burn the first batch of tomato sauce. The smell of smoke had filled the entire apartment.
So the disaster had already happened before the party even started.
Exactly. I had hoped to be the perfect host. In my mind, I had envisioned a calm, candlelit dinner. But the reality was me covered in flour, trying to open all the windows because the smoke alarm had started beeping.
I can just see it. Did your friends know how much you had struggled before they arrived?
They saw the oil on the floor, but they were so kind. They had brought some extra bread and wine just in case. It was almost as if they had sensed I might need help.
That's the beauty of friendship. My first time baking a cake for my mother's birthday was similar. I had followed a recipe I found online. I had bought the most expensive chocolate, but I had forgotten one small thing, the baking powder.
Oh no. So it was a flat cake?
It was a chocolate brick. By the time my mother came home, I had already started crying. I had put so much love into it, but I had missed one tiny ingredient. She laughed and told me it was the best tasting brick she had ever eaten. Let's move the timeline to a bigger change. Moving to a new city for the first time. Leo, before you moved to your current city, where had you lived?
I had lived in a very small town my whole life. I had never seen a building taller than 5 stories. I had known every single neighbor by name. So when I moved here, the scale of everything was overwhelming.
I can imagine. Had you already found a job before you packed your bags?
Yes, I had secured a position at a small design firm. I had spent months building my portfolio, but even though I had prepared for the work, I had not prepared for the loneliness. For the first few weeks, I missed the familiar faces I had left behind.
That is the hardest part of a first move. When I moved to my first apartment, I had always lived with my parents. I had never had to pay a bill or fix a leaking tap. On my first night alone, the silence was so loud. I realized I had taken my mother's cooking and my father's jokes for granted.
We don't realize what we had until we don't have it anymore. Had you already bought furniture before you moved in?
No, I had planned to go shopping on the first day, but I was so tired from moving boxes that I just slept on the floor. I had thought I would be so organized, but the reality had proven me wrong.
Let's talk about that first day at work. Before you walked into your first classroom as a teacher, Anna, what had you imagined it would be like?
Oh, I had imagined that every student would be perfectly quiet and would listen to every word I said. I had prepared a very complicated lesson plan. I had even bought a new outfit to look professional.
And what happened when the bell rang?
Everything I had planned went out the window. One student had lost his book, another had forgotten his pen, and the computer I had checked 10 minutes earlier suddenly stopped working. It was chaotic.
But you survived.
I did. Because I had studied the subject so deeply, I was able to talk without the computer. I realized that the perfect teacher I had imagined in my head wasn't real. The real teacher was the one who could handle the mess.
I felt the same at my first design job. Before my first meeting, I had created 20 different versions of a logo. I had stayed up until 3 a.m. making sure every line was perfect. But in the meeting, the client told me they had already changed their mind about the company name.
Oh, that's painful. So all that work had become useless in a second.
Yes, but the skills I had used to make those logos, they stayed with me. Even if the work had disappeared, the experience had grown my talent.
This brings us to a very important topic for our listeners, learning English. Think about the first time you understood a whole movie or a whole conversation.
That's a huge first. Before that moment, many of us had struggled for years. We had listened to tapes, we had memorized thousands of words, and we had often felt like giving up.
Exactly. But by the time you reached that aha moment, your brain had already done so much invisible work. It had built those connections while you were sleeping. It had stored those sounds in your long-term memory.
It's true. When I first moved to London, I had studied English for 6 years in school, but I had never heard a real London accent. For the first 3 days, I felt like I had learned a different language entirely.
But you didn't give up. Within a month, you realized that the foundation you had built in school was finally supporting you. The words you had forgotten started to come back.
Yes, it's all about that timeline. We are here today because of everything we had done yesterday. Every small effort we had made in the past had prepared us for this moment right now.
As we come to the end of our episode, let's look back at our timeline one more time. Today, we have talked about our first times, but more importantly, we have seen the value of what happened before those moments.
We used the past perfect to show the background, the things we had forgotten, the preparations we had made, and the dreams we had built.
To our listeners, next time you face a first time, remember the story behind it. If you feel nervous, think about how much you had already achieved just to get to this point. You had already found the courage to try.
And remember, the mistakes you had made in the past are just lessons that have helped you grow. Don't be afraid of the past perfect parts of your life. They make your present much richer.
Well said, Leo. We hope this conversation has helped you understand this beautiful grammar point. But more than that, we hope it has inspired you to look at your own timeline with pride.
Thank you for joining us today. I had looked forward to this episode all week, and it was even better than I had imagined.
Me too, Leo. Thank you everyone for listening to Anna's English channel. Keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep building your amazing stories. Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.